Right. So, episode 3 of NCIS Sydney. So, it starts off with a bunch of people going to, I guess, learn how to swim so they could eventually surf. And one of the women is not thrilled at all about this. She doesn't want to learn how to swim because she doesn't want to learn how to surf. Now, first off, you live in Australia. You're an island. Learning how to swim is a good thing. But not necessarily in the ocean. I mean, you can learn to swim in a swimming pool. That's perfectly fine. But you should know how to swim. Definitely. Especially if you live in Australia. But everyone should learn how to swim because you never know when you're near a body of water and you fall in. Always a good thing. Or, there's flooding. Yeah, you probably should know how to swim. But anyway. So they go into the tidal pool. I thought at first it was an ocean, but it's a tidal pool. And they're swimming. He's teaching them how to swim. Actually, it looks like he's more teaching them doggy paddle. And that same little girl sees a shark. So she points out that she's seeing a fish, and I'm sorry, how can you not know that's a shark fin? I mean, seriously, I realize that Jaws was from the 70s, but dude. So it deposits an arm. I mean, just the thing for someone like that woman who said that she doesn't want to even get wet, she doesn't want to learn how to ride the waves. What a great way to tell her you're right, you don't want to do this, than having a shark deposit an arm. So, of course, they call NCIS, and Mackie assumes that, okay, we cannot assume that this guy is dead. I mean, it could easily be that he doesn't have an arm, but that, now, before I continue, how is it doesn't look like Mackie is carrying a gun. Or at least there's nothing to suggest that she is now carrying a gun. So, how in the hell is Dee carrying one? Because last week, Evie even said that it would take about 6 months, at best, for him to get a gun. So suddenly he has one? I mean, I assume strings were pulled because NCIS, but again, why does he seemingly have one and Mackie still doesn't? Anyway, so back to the story. So, they take the arm back, and Rosie's looking at it, and he verifies that this is definitely a Navy SEAL. Mackie and JD go to a bunch of Navy SEALs who are doing training to find out if they're missing a colleague. They're not. And, at first you get the sense that maybe they're the ones who are hiding something, which, made sense, but you quickly find out they're not hiding shit. They're actually being very forthcoming and helpful. So they get back, and they're trying to figure out what to do. They find out, Blue finds out that they're at that he lives at this dive place. So they go to the place to find out what they can about the guy whose arm they found. And unfortunately, he has no family. The only people he has are the 3 divers that are there. And one of the divers, he looks very, very sad. Unlike the other 2, who are more matter of fact. And he takes one glance at the aquarium, and specifically that weird fish. And now there was a guy who he kicked one hammer, kicked out. I just love the absurdity of this show. He's Hammer, the other one is Nails. I mean, come on. But he kicked this guy out. Now, I'm pretty sure I made a connection that the others did not, but so apparently he's claiming that he wouldn't pay for their underwater wedding. And so he came back for the footage, and they told him there isn't any because, you're not going to pay, you don't get footage, which makes sense. So they find out what they can, and they leave. So while they're out, Evie and Dee do some digging, and they find out about these guys that work at that dive place. And they discover that they all served as Navy SEALs, and what they're doing now, and that basically they're having a tough time adjusting. And Mackie even points out that it's hard to readjust when you're being taught how to be a killing machine, and then suddenly how do you live when there is no war? So then it's decided, okay, who's going to talk to whom? So Evie decides she wants to go see the hot divers. And Dee, of course, ends up having to go with her, and he comes up with a story of, they want to do an underwater wedding. And Evie's like, I told you no diving. And I'm thinking to myself, dude, you really think that you're going to be going through this wedding? Why are you worried about diving? It's not going to happen. But anyway, this is just a cover story. So I should have realized that Dee showing off his gun earlier was going to come back to bite him in the ass. As much as the gun, as much as Evie getting that gate monitor proved helpful, his getting a gun screws him. So they split up. He's going to look at the boat, and she also again takes a swipe at his being so unattractive, which tells me that the lady doth protesteth too much. Because last week she said, when he said that I'm not just a pretty face, she said, not even that, or something like that. This week, when she said that, nobody would believe they're in a relationship because she's too hot for him. And I'm just like screaming, number one, what? I mean, yeah, there are plenty of people who will, judge couples based on looks and say, what does she see in him, or what does he see in her, or whatever? Because they're not the sufficient level of hotness that they think that this person should be interested in because of what they look like. And she's doing the same damn thing, which tells me either she's that conceited, but she's already mentioned last week that she's just messing around. Even though it was more of Dee didn't understand a word that came out of her mouth, more so that you didn't realize she was being serious. She was kidding. This week, again, she's like, oh yeah, I'm too hot for you. And he's like, wait, you don't think I'm hot? Number one, yes, she does. Number two, I wouldn't be too worried about this because, number one, just because a woman doesn't think you're hot is not the end of the world. And Xena thought you were perfectly hot. If she had a chance, she would have devoured you immediately. It just would have happened. So, they tell this cover story, well, Dee does, and Evie excuses herself by saying that she needs to use the loo. And she's just noticing, she takes a step towards the aquarium, and Oysters steps between her and the aquarium. It's like, yeah, that's not suspicious at all to, prevent her from going near the aquarium. I mean, yeah, okay. So she goes to the loo, and as she's doing that, Dee is looking at the boat. Unfortunately, the guys notice that he's packing. So they assume that he is someone sent by whomever after they said no deal. And Dee is clueless. Well, while this is happening, Evie is caught looking through the oxygen containers and discovering drugs. And Oysters catches her. She just looks at him, and next thing you see is Dee at gunpoint by Hammer, and Evie comes to the rescue by putting a gun to Hammer's brainstem and asks Dee if he's having fun. So he takes the gun back. They all go back, and Dee is quite happy and excited to see that Evie not only tied up Oysters, but hog-tied him. I love Dee. He's so excitable. He's so much fun. He's so genuine and kind, and yeah. With the way things have been happening with Evie's comments, I'm really, really concerned what's going to happen with their relationship. I'm afraid they're going to screw it up by putting them in a romantic relationship. No, thank you. But this is NCIS, and there hasn't been an NCIS that hasn't involved some sort of romantic entanglements, even if it's if it's unrequited. it's just, yeah. So anyway, so they get taken to NCIS, and they're trying to figure out what's happening. They are being interrogated by JD, and they immediately cop to the drug charge. Immediately. And after he's done, he goes to the others, and Evie's congratulating him for getting 3 confessions in less than an hour. And he's like, yeah, that's just too bad, it's bullshit. What do you mean? These guys wouldn't give us anything if they were waterboarded. They're not going to cop to a drug charge like it was a traffic ticket. You know, and how they mentioned that the drugs were cocaine. What druggie doesn't know, what drug dealer doesn't know what drugs they're pushing? Which, yeah. And so someone is lying. So they go to get more information, and Blue comes. Now, earlier, Blue had invited everybody to farewell drinks. And JD gave this look like, really? You're doing this now? Which, at least that's what I thought he was doing. But looking back, no, he knew something was up. So, she showed them a graph of, well, we didn't see what the graph was, but it turns out that he died, his heart stopped while he was still on the surface. So it's not that he dove and that, you know, that he died somehow underwater. And so JD tells them what he thinks happened, you know, fills in the missing piece about that, when Oysters was saying how, oh yeah, he dove in when the guys weren't coming back. No. So JD just comes out and decides, and everybody watches the show, and Dee's having a grand old time because Hammer just punches Oysters silly. And can't say I blame him, because the realization that one of their own was killed obviously isn't going to sit well with him, because he didn't think he was going to do anything untoward. He thought he was doing a simple salvage operation. So, then Blue asks Rosie if he got her invitation, and he's pleading ignorance. You know, he doesn't check text, he doesn't check email, and he was listening to Marty Robbins' My Woman, My Woman, My Wife. So he's claiming he doesn't check either one, and I'm calling BS on that, because how else are people going to get a hold of you? So anyway, Oysters is arrested, and now, considering what ends up happening, Oysters killed a man for literally no reason, in my opinion. But anyway, so, and it's discovered that the fallen comrade, because they notice Hammer's arm with the tattoo, the bone frog tattoo, they discovered that the Navy SEAL that was killed, his father was killed in action. And that's the purpose of the tattoos. So that makes what happened even more heartbreaking. So they decide to let the two guys go because they have unfinished business. Obviously, it was a setup. So they meet the guy. The same guy who, when his body washed ashore, the dead guy's body washed ashore, he was standing there, just looking over everybody's shoulder to see what was happening. Until Mackie found him and started chasing him. Now, how is it that they didn't put two and two together? This was the same guy who Hammer threw out of the dive shop. It was the exact same guy. It wasn't that he was there for an underwater wedding. He was, he's the dealer that they were dealing with. So he shows up, and to say the least, Hammer and Nails is slightly pissed off. So he talks about patriotism, saying that everybody is patriotic in their own way, which is true. The idea that there's only one way to be patriotic is rather annoying. Democrats get accused of not being patriotic because they don't just blindly follow whatever they're told they should do. So yeah, I get that. However, there is a limit to that. And the limit is that, so they grab this guy after he was going to, it looked like he was going to shoot him, because they gave him the tape, which of course was hidden in the aquarium. That's, the oysters actually helped out people finding that, because Evie noticed how protective he was of the aquarium. So she figured out that's where the tape was. So they obviously looked at the tape and they're like, we're not giving that to anybody. That's not happening. They had also found the drone. The Navy guys that they first suspected turned out like, yeah, they're good guys. Now, the Navy, one of the Navy SEALs comes up and says, yeah, that's not one of ours, it's too slick. But nobody figured out until later who the drone belonged to. So the guy is holding a gun to Hammer and Nails, and Nails distracts him long enough for Hammer to get the gun off of him, which, yeah, I that's the least absurd thing I've seen, because, I mean, he's a big guy. I have no problem believing that he could disarm him. By the way, dead people still look like mannequins on this show. So, they grab him, and basically they do the bully thing. Only instead of a toilet, they just push his head underwater. Under the, I don't know if this is still the ocean or still a tide pool. But, they're trying to get him to stop. They're like, this isn't our deal. This isn't going to help with filthy, it's not doing anybody any good. So they arrest the two. I'm not sure why. I guess for attempted murder. And they arrested the DOD guy. Or maybe this was to make it look good that the guy that they were dealing with would think that they were arresting everybody and not just him. So, I forgot to mention earlier when they found the guy, well, actually the arm, Dempsey looked like he had come from surfing. Or at least she asked about a costume party, so I assume he went as a surfer. And he kindly just had her hold up a towel so he could change in front of her. I'm actually surprised at how well she took that. Because most Americans are very, very uncomfortable when it comes to nudity. But anyway. So back to the present. So they take the guy back to be interrogated. But before they could do that, who shows up? Richard Brinkler? I can't remember the dude's name, but he's a DOD attaché. So he comes and they're like, oh, I hope you're not his lawyer. He's like, yeah, I wouldn't take his case. So apparently he's a dirty DOD agent, which based on how he handled himself out in the field, I'm going to say that he wasn't a field agent for the DOD in any sense, because, my God, he's horrible. So they take him away, and it seemed like the DOD guy seemed really, well, I wouldn't say happy, but he wasn't unhappy about what was happening, which I'm not sure. I mean, the only reason he was able to hold out as long as he did was that DOD was hoping that they would find out who he was selling secrets to. But, so yeah, I wouldn't be so comfy about that. But anyway, so Mackie puts 2 and 2 together and realizes that the drone, well, she goes to meet Blue. And Blue again starts blabbering, because first she seemed to think that she implied that she's doing drugs, that Mackie was giving her drugs, and Mackie's like, breathe. And I think she's the only one who refers to her as Bluebird. But anyway, so they discovered that that cocaine was from a DEA bust. It's like, well, the DEA destroys their drugs, so how could they have it? Plus, there's that drone. So Mackie figures out it's the CIA. So she and Dempsey, who's like, wait, did you ever go home? It was never actually explained where home is. I mean, they literally, just suddenly had to stay there. So finding accommodations, okay. So they go to see, so she's explaining her theory about the CIA and, that it's DEA drugs and the way things work in the U.S. government. And when he asks, well, who's behind it, she goes, God only knows. Well, God and one other person. So they visit Richard. And he, of course, is playing dumb. Especially when she mentions about the CIA and how, the surveillance footage. And he's like, why would the CIA be spying on Australian ships? Oh, who said anything about Australian ships? Got him. So, he says that he's just the DOD's fireman, that he just looks through the paper and makes sure to put out spot fires. And I'm just like, yeah, that's a really great way to do business, to wait for things to become a spot fire and then deal with it. Great strategy. So, she basically got money for Campbell, the dead guy, to give to his diving family by basically threatening that if he doesn't, that she'll, make it front page news about what the CIA is up to. So they understand each other very well. So they go back to headquarters, and where have you two been? Visiting alternate reality. Wouldn't recommend. And so Blue is disappointed that nobody RSVP'd to her party. And she said that this is where we found out she'd been there 3 weeks. So 3rd episode, 3 weeks. Okay. And Mac is like, wait, that was today? And she smacks Dempsey for not telling her. And Evie's like, oh, I've got something to do today. And Dee's like, yeah, I can't do this anymore. You two Aussies are cruel. And so he unveils this beautiful Navy cake. Welcome aboard, Blue. And as that's happening, Rosie comes out and she's just so excited but speechless. And she's like, wait, but McNamara. And apparently, this is where I think that he was, pretending the entire time. Because he said that the McNamara call where she wrote the note, to have JD call him back, he was just calling to confirm that they were hiring Blue. So he knew the entire time, this entire episode, that they were going with Blue. And he pretended the entire time he knew nothing of what was going on. So then they had a group selfie. So that was a cute ending. Kind of something that you would do as a season finale, but still cute. So that's how the episode ended. Let's see if I wanted to mention anything else. Well, we know Evie's not interested in the water. Let's see, she's not interested in drinking, and she's not interested in the water. What kind of freaking Aussie is she? Good Lord. I mean, fine not be interested in one of those things, but not interested in either one? Okay. Anyway, let's see if there's anything else about this episode I wanted to mention. I mentioned that the Navy SEALs that they talked to turned out to be very helpful because they're the ones who found the drone after Mackie found out from Blue about the mating caves. So they were able to bring up the drone, discover that it's a surveillance drone, and that the tape was gone. So yeah, they were very helpful. Trying to think if there's anything else that I'm missing. Any other cute comments? No, I think I've covered everything. So with that, I will see you guys in the next video.